Now it's recording. This is a preview or an introduction to the following video on documentary movie making. I make errors in confusing statements and I want to correct before the viewing audience gets upset. First, I accuse the Kennedy family of manufacturing illegal alcohol during Prohibition. I had read Republican propaganda attacking the Kennedys in the 1960s and believed what I was told. The alcohol the Kennedys produced was sold after Prohibition had ended in December 1933. More confusing is my statement on the large crowds watching drag racing in the mid-1970s. It is my belief in the 1970s and now in 1924 that the crowd of 300,000 spectators shown in the Maisel Brothers documentary movie Gimme Shelter, shot in December 1969 in Altamont, California, was essentially the same as the crowd shown in our movie American Nitro. This is important when there is little doubt the wild energy of the 300,000 no-entrance-free mob that watched the Rolling Stones in this concert represented a massive protest towards the raging Vietnam War in 1960 Vietnam. All right. In the early no, it's all wrong. First, I want to mention this book, Art Worlds by Howard S. Becker, who claims all art represents the culture that produced the artist and the artwork. It is my belief American boxing in the early 20th century and separately drag racing in the 1970s represented American lifestyle, habits, and way of life for part of Northern California during the end of the Vietnam War, especially that mob in Altamont with the Rolling Stones concert. These are the reasons I am writing this report and contributed to making these movies. There are way over 50 to 60 textbooks on filmmaking for sale on the internet. I use only one documentary film by Paul Rotha, Sinclair Road, and Richard Griffith, right here, that thing. It is so, published in the 1930s. It is so, this is almost 60 or 70 years, no, it's almost 80 years ago. It is so old-fashioned, it is not even listed in the normal Google collection of movie-making books. So I am as old-fashioned as Rotha. I am not writing a textbook. This is a personal story. All the problems of making and distributing a real documentary movie are told here. I've tried to get almost everything, and it's all about money, available cash money. All right. I am uncomfortable with the word creation, though in the end, it is what we did with the movie American Nitro. It was like building a house very slowly, piece by piece, as slow as possible. We were youngsters in the beginning. It took forever, or that is what it felt like. If someone like us wants to make a real movie, a real documentary movie, this essay or statement is worth viewing or reading or viewing. That's my belief. From my experience, most movies are made by collaborations of multiple people of varying skills and abilities. My welfare, I worked for the welfare department. My welfare department life taught me this reality. The seemingly incompetent can have hidden talent. The gifted with obvious talent can have grave social trouble. There is the scene before the camera and the reality behind the camera. This is the life behind the cameras and recorders of American Nitro. When I was in high school, my friend Jeffrey Brown would talk and dream about attending a film school in Santa Cruz, California. There was a University of California school in Santa Cruz, and it's still there. Brown's fantasies remained in my imagination when I was an unemployed derelict in Santa Rosa, Sonoma County, California. Another fact that would influence our future was our Uncle Harvey, or our future, or my future, who was the rich man's son of our grandfather, Clinton Mason. I knew Harvey as a remote figure who was considered by all a complete family disgrace. Harvey was a handsome man who lived in Ileton, California on a really beautiful ark. I will never forget this picture. Here's the picture of an Ileton slough there. And he had an ark on that, it looks similar to that. Or it's the same thing. The above picture shows an Ileton slough like Harvey's art was built on. His girlfriend was named Lil, a former used-up, broken prostitute, alcoholic, and probable drug addict who was Harvey's girlfriend. I remember only seeing her once as a middle-aged, frail, silent blonde wearing a loose white and yellow dress. She never said a word. I have being at the bottom of the welfare department for all my work life, and seeing the horror of really, really poor people, of all types and descriptions, I have upside down values, and so I think somebody like Lil was really, she was admirable, but also the Ileton was a center of outrage of prostitution it's probably in the Depression and before and after World War II. And it was a horror of some kind, and Lil was a product of it, one of the workers in the thing. When we were there, this was the early 1950s, was my mother, was visiting her brother. It was all fragrance, light, and atmosphere, a sense of time, of day, immediacy, and a fleeting paradise. Harvey truly loved Lil and came home from work one day as a boat repairman and found Lil's body floating in the slough behind their ark. Harvey never recovered from her death. That's my belief. I now feel their relationship was the most intimate male-female relationship in the Mason family. In the 2 years of my welfare job in the 1970s, Harvey developed bad heart trouble. I would visit him in the Sacramento County Hospital. Heart bypass surgery had not been developed, so Harvey was a dead man. For me, Harvey was fascinating. He was a childlike, probably from the heart trouble, though in any way he was never childish. Though for me he was more intelligent and insightful than all my aunts and uncles combined. He never stopped telling stories of Ileton boat owners. They were all wooden boats and beautiful big things. And every Sausalito and Ileton Prohibition era criminal he remembered. He seemed to have a photographic memory and total recall. During my conversation with Harvey, I had done no research on Mason family prohibition involvement. This is where I thought that the Kennedys were involved. They were not. It is probable my talks with Harvey led to my later Sacramento State Library. Downtown Sacramento has some beautiful libraries, and world-class libraries. And in the 1920s, they have all these newspaper collections. So I looked up all the newspapers of the 20s and 30s, and most alcohol production distilleries in the U.S. became saturated with illegal alcohol production because the drinkers were still out there, and all you had to do is if you knew how to make alcohol, you got instant cash. For our great grandfather and grandfather had been distillery owners in San Francisco and Sausalito, and had made a lot of money and became fully ensnared in the depths of prohibition crime. What is so frustrating now, Harvey could have told me everything those old newspapers didn't know. The Hearst Press, and that Hearst Press couldn't have been more delighted to run the Mason rum trial in 1930 when Grandpa was witness number one. I can just imagine. Remember W.R. up in W.R. Hearst up in San Simeon? He was picking all these. He couldn't have had more fun up there. He enjoyed all that, making these outrageous stories, news stories. Well, my family was one of them. The Hearst Press couldn't have been more delighted to run the Mason rum trial in 1930 with Grandpa as witness number one. Ran for 7 days in all Bay Area newspapers. Harvey would have known every detail: peg leg usage, the killings, the stabbing of the prettiest girl in Petaluma, all of it. It's far worse than I'm describing here. Prohibition crime in the underworld spread into the business classes, and my family were a glaring and disgraceful Bay Area example. Serious criminal involvement was the message, and nothing was ever mentioned to me as a child or teenager. 50 years later, the San Francisco Chronicle republished a reminiscence of the horror when my relatives were dead or almost dead. Those that remained had no interest. I am flattering myself when I felt I inherited a lot of Harvey in me, and the more I write and remember, the more I think this is true. I was married to a grammar school teacher in my 20s, and we lived on a 5-acre ranch on Bennett Valley Road in Santa Rosa, California. It was really kind of half of it was like a paradise, and 5 acres. It was just beautiful stuff. I was married to a grammar school teacher, and I invited my brother to live with us when he graduated from high school. We both received $75 income from our father's inheritance. So that was $150, and we handed it over to the wife. That was a lot of money in those days. Cash made us more attractive to the wife. We weren't TV watchers. The foothills there cut off all TV reception. Santa Rosa, and I was a type 1 diabetic. Here, still am, right like that, to stay alive. I became obsessed with watching old movies all over the Bay Area. So the brother and I spent nearly 5 years gripped with what we could find on this subject. One of them was the Berkeley Film Archive, which is a real treasure to, and I bought this book in the Berkeley Film Archive bookstore. In 1965, I went to the Santa Rosa Library. I remember parking the car and walking up. It was real old-fashioned upstairs. You know, it's since been torn down, but this was 1965. I went to the Santa Rosa Library looking for Brown's Santa Cruz Film School. Somehow the librarian could only find San Francisco State College, and that had a film school. So I, in a fantastic delusion, I caught the hound out of Santa Rosa to the SF bus station and Allen Ginsberg's poem, God's only way of building the rickety structure of time, to hold the bags, to send on the roads, to carry our luggage from place to place, looking for a bus to ride us back home to eternity, where the heart was left and farewell tears began. I remember that bus station was just a horror. It's supposed to be torn down, but it had a roof to stop the rain. But otherwise, fog and wind and everything, and about at least 12 bus station stops, with buses there, and it was all loud and exhausting, awful. But that I really think Ginsberg was a talented talented poet. From the bus station, I took the streetcar to Stonestown and San Francisco State College and Film School out in that silvery fog until the instructor in documentary film named Hoberman. It was one of the finest college courses I ever attended. And we watched some really beautiful movies. I remember Robert Flaherty and A Man of Aaron, and that was one to remember is one of the it was in Ireland. Those you can find all those movies. So Hoberman had me into his office, and he said, we got budget cuts, and we got to get rid of. There's too many students all over this place, too many of them, and you're one of them, and you're going to have to get out of here. So I was rejected. I remember being obstinate and enrolling in script writing in the next semester, where my script ideas submissions being rejected, causing me to quit school, the only time in my school career, which lasted well into my 50s, when I failed to complete a semester. Prior to failing script writing, I didn't fail script writing. I withdrew with some kind of passing grade. Prior to failing script writing, I completed a film production course with the making of a 5-minute movie. I think it was about 5 minutes and 30 or 40 seconds of a fairy tale from my childhood memory of listening to the fairy tale, The Troll Under the Bridge. I remember my grandma's sister would read it to me when I was about 4 and 5 and 6 years old. I remember listening to it. And so we made, with a lot of help from friends I had and my wife, we made this silent movie. Where I showed I remember it was the last movie in the class, and this is completely silent. And the audience was just hyper, and they turned. I remember the lights came on, and they all turned on me and said, "You didn't make that movie." I stole the movie from somebody. Well, I remember it was horribly embarrassing, but I knew I could move an audience. I had the ability to enrage and and have control over an audience. I really felt that. I remember I felt that on the bus going home. Sure, it was embarrassing. You know, my face was all red. You're an outright liar, and but I knew I could move an audience. This movie, now renamed The Troll, is now available for viewing on my brother's American Nitro internet site on Facebook. It takes a little while to get it, but you can find The Troll and then watch and it's got to slow it down, but it's all, the brother knows how to slow this thing. It was shot in 8mm. But so it's you can see it, it's black and white, and you can see exactly what it is. And you write in if you or if you think I'm a liar and a cheat and stole the movie. I have to add, this filmmaking class held underground next to a brand new television studio. It was like we were one of the first people in ever after the construction equipment left. Was completely silent, with no light except for a tiny crack of light coming under the classroom doors. The total darkness and silence greatly increased the emotional response of this student audience. Also, the Vietnam War in 1967 was raging, and the next year, in 1968, San Francisco State had the first college student riot in the U.S. protesting American troops in Vietnam. So it was what's going on right now over the war in Gaza, but it was even more. I remember the school principal's name, it was Japanese, named Hayakawa, and he really got when those students started to roar and protest, he called the cops, and they really busted up the rioters. But remember, I just fled. I didn't want to even be there. I could get hurt. I remember, but I remember feeling the latent tension in the film class ready to explode. The class was remarkably alert and attentive, watching all the student films. Remember, the best movies are made by women, and somehow still remember the movies. Some of them, most of them were silent, like mine were. But these women they had it together. Later, when my brother moved to San Francisco, we watched a midnight movie screening at the Presidio Theater in the Marina District of the site of the World War I World's Fair. All the movies I saw during that night's episode had the most powerful influence on me and maybe my brother. What was revealed was a whole world of underground movies that had never made it to the normal theatrical distribution. I remember, that's a whole different subject here. I remember Kenneth Anger and Russ Meyer and Mudhoney. Andy Warhol's movies were also there. Obviously, I only know the surface of this subject, though I felt it was influenced strongly, and they had a big influence on our future movies. My intention has always been to have a strong effect on the audience and to move the emotions in viewers through visuals and sound. My uncle, who lived with my grandmother until he was married, bought a 1949 television. And so I was about 7 years old. And as a little boy, I watched test patterns. I would sit on the floor and watch test patterns on the television. And this wasn't exactly the test pattern I watched, but I would just be transfixed in front of this thing until television shows began at 6 o'clock. They didn't run 24 hours a day. You waited till 6 o'clock and then you saw something on the television. We were in Marin County, San Anselmo, Marin County. was across the bay from San Francisco. My intention has always been to have a strong effect on the audience, to move the emotions of the viewers through visuals and sound. My uncle, who lived with my, I got that. All right, so the one show I remember, and I was transfixed by, there were others, but one show was Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. Now, here's the picture of the Kukla is plays an old man who's embarrassed about losing his hair, so he wears a hat. This is Fran. She's just a beautiful woman, and here is this was Ollie. Ollie is some type of lizard, enormous lizard or swamp creature who has he only has one tooth, and he wears a necktie. So, and he's afraid of losing his hair. So they put a hat on him, but he didn't have any hair to begin with. So it was a puppet show for a remarkably talented puppet show for children that gained a large live audience with more adults watching than children. I remember the music and the beautiful woman who interacted with the puppets. What are you doing down in your basement? She imaginary basement. And she would bend over and look down and see an array of wildly crazy puppets. There were like 15 or 20 of them. And I was too young to see the sophistication and talent of the performances. They could have influenced my unconscious mind. I hope all of them did. Other shows were endless westerns, cowboys chasing wild, out-of-control Indians, Flash Gordon space serials that for me became George Lucas space movies, and crime movies with the Japanese as sophisticated criminals in deep underwater caverns plotting against gullible and stupid American victims. Another problem that greatly influenced our future was the polio epidemic that raged through the country and California until a cure was found about 1954. Our father was a medical doctor whose sister became paralyzed from polio in either World War I or the 1920s. Our father fully understood what this meant for his children. We were removed from community gatherings, neighbors' houses, public swimming pools, grocery stores, and movie theaters. We never went to any movie theaters. I was allowed attendance in a rich man's grammar school. That was 2700 Jackson Street at the town school for boys, and then quickly whisked home. This was, they were incredibly rich. The parents owned half of California. I'm afraid to mention any of them. I remember their names, and I was friends with several of them. But I remember one of them had a really, really beautiful mother. Oh, wow, I still can't remember her. But she all the juveniles in my class were but my I'm afraid to say a word because they could sue me. My anti-authoritarian grandmother stuck me in a cartoon show in San Francisco, in San Anselmo. I remember it was the Tamalpais Theater. And somehow somebody took me to the Parkside Theater on Taraval Street in San Francisco. We watched Swiss Family Robinson, a shipwreck story from 1940. Watching it now on YouTube, which is easy to do, you could still it is still frightening and nothing for a little child who had never seen a violent movie in a theater before. I started to cry and wanted to go home. I cannot remember who took me to this movie. Maybe it was my grandmother. It could have been somebody else. In the early 1950s, we began going to drive-in movies in San Francisco. And all of these were formative events for our future. I still don't understand what this movie Ignorance meant or whether it was good or bad. At San Francisco State, when classes ended, I would immediately head for the library to research movies and my individual interests. I remember my hands over running over large numbers of books and finding Black Champion. This thing, right there. By Finis Farr. Now, Finis Farr now is criticized as a low quality biographer and author. That though he wasn't any low quality author on this book, because he understood the humor. He had a sense of humor, and anybody who talks about Johnson or the life of Johnson and Farr was able to see the humor in it, and Johnson also was a humorous man. A few minutes later, I grabbed I put the book back on the shelf, and then quickly pulled it out. It hit my unconscious. A few minutes later, I grabbed the Farr book and devoured the subject on the bus going home. When I got back in Santa Rosa kitchen, I handed the book to my brother, and a long research episode began. The main subject of Black Champion was the most spectacular sporting event in U.S. history. That's a true statement. The Jeffries versus Johnson boxing match, Reno, Nevada, July 4th, 1910. Johnson, the son of a slave, against the finest undefeated white heavyweight champion who ever pulled on a boxing glove. It was the ultimate race war, and in a wildly racist country, 114 or 115 years ago. James J. Jeffries, an American hero, badly overweight at over 325 pounds. He weighs pushing 400. And in debt from gambling losses, trained for a year, entering the ring at 225. He looked invincible against a smiling and laughing Jack Johnson, whose boxing style and rig movement was like a panther, edging toward Jeffries and daring Jeffries to land a single punch on him. Johnson is really one of the great boxers in heavyweight history. The large crowd in what is now Sparks, Nevada, had been disarmed at the gate. The promoter was named Tex Rickard. He wouldn't let anybody with a rifle or a pistol or even knives into the arena. Because it would have shot Johnson to death. Now here's a picture of the. There's the. Rickard spent a lot of money on both the filming and the photographs of the fight. So you can see there's a proper picture of the thing. Jeffries, an ancient hulk, was a wasted opponent who never landed an effective punch and absorbed a fearful beating, being knocked out in the 15th round. Jeffries, after the fight, admitted to the press that at his best, he never could have landed an effective punch on Johnson. The Farr biography of Johnson was humorous, describing the Reno crowd atmosphere and Johnson leaving Reno in a private railway car attached to a normal train. He had about $160,000 in cash, and that it's very hard to estimate, but that was like, way over several $1,000,000. It was a huge amount of money. And a black, see, he was the richest black man in the North America. Uh, uh, Heading for Chicago and his notorious bar room called Cafe des Champions. Johnson had a string of beautiful white wives and girlfriends, and in 1913 was found guilty of violating the Mann Act, transporting women over state lines for the purposes of prostitution. Johnson was legally married to a white woman. Here's the marriage ceremony, or similar to it, but married to a white, though that meant nothing to an all-white jury. Johnson fled to Canada and then Europe and Russia, getting in drinking bouts with Tsarist favorite holy man Grigory Rasputin. I remember that from the history books, but that was about 1914. But way before the Russian Revolution. Now here's another. This is my favorite picture of Johnson. You can't really see, but he is wearing street clothes. But you can see he's elegantly dressed, and he had $160,000 in cash. And I think he could speak he could speak French. And he learned how to. He was a very intelligent man. But also more about Johnson is he developed emotional trouble, where he wasn't a mental case at all, but he would just freeze sometimes, and because he was in a horrible racist mess. He was one of those hated men in the United States, and it had an emotional. But he was also hugely talented, and he was an actor, a stage actor, and multiple talented man. All right, starting in 1967, my brother and I started researching the Jeffries Johnson-Reno fight. I remember Reno fight photographs ordered from a Midwestern boxing photograph collector, showing a broad swath of Reno streets, large crowds, and comical characters in John L. Sullivan. He was the first heavyweight champion, as a fat old man. I remember he was introduced in the ring. The event was an enormous party turned race war. The photos were beautiful and whipped up our enthusiasm. We both became so excited with endless talking and spreading photos all over the old farmhouse. My wife, after week of our passionate and crazed talk, threw us both out of the house to continue with the photos stretched out on car hoods in an old shed. We also traveled to Reno to view the site of Jeffries' training camp named Moana Springs. I always loved the name. Then it was a beautiful place when Jeffries used it as a training camp, and then later it became a state park and is just an elegant place where it's got swimming pools. Reno then and now has completely forgotten the fight. We also visited a fight film collector somewhere near Lodi, California. His film collection was so extensive I had never heard of most of the fights, and I knew boxing history. In December 22nd, 1969, I was saved by the Sacramento County Welfare Department with a lifetime job, and my boxing history movie work stopped. The lesson to be delivered here: the Kimberlins were capable of deep research and delivery of high-quality documentary film product. Drag racing. In Santa Rosa's Bennett Valley, there was no television reception, so I listened only to the radio. I am sound oriented and home alone with a growing herd of 13 cats. Now I got, you want to see one of them's up there. I got the successors over there. I wish you could see upside down with paws up the air, sound asleep. Uh, uh, I remember so I love cats and animals, and so I had 13 cats in Santa Rosa running around the house in York. In this rabble, I kept hearing drag race ads on a high quality FM radio. I still got the radio from Fremont, California. I later learned the voices were announcers from Los Angeles radio stations that specialized in this style of sound advertising. They were easily the best in the world, or that was my impression. I am not a sports fan now or then. I hardly even know which end of the arena the football players are running on. Uh, though I have been fascinated by boxing and boxing history since I was a teenager. I've got a list of the number of boxing champions I've personally watched. It's about somewhere around 15 boxing champions. I watched Sonny Liston. I watched. You can only watch a boxer really both in training and to really see what they are. You got to watch them in training, and then you have to watch them in an actual bout. Though I've been fascinated by boxing and boxing history since I was a teenager, since boxing causes severe brain damage in near 70% of boxers, boxing should be outlawed immediately. The radio announcer stuck in my memory, and in the early 1970s, my brother had produced and sold a Jeffries versus Johnson documentary movie to McGraw-Hill Book Company, distributed in the U.S. and the British Commonwealth countries. The thing is, he got incredible status in San Francisco State because the college professors hadn't made they hadn't made any movies that were successful. I don't think they ever made any. I don't know what they did, but the brother got he got an incredible status. You know, the crowds would part when he walked through into the school. Because he was a real somebody. We both, but additionally, we both inherited the land under a Standard Oil gas station in the Chinatown neighborhood of Oakland, California. Now, Chinatown in Oakland is all the rich Chinese people. They live outside of Chinatown. They live out in the suburbs, but they always have a connection to their past. They own some property or a business in Chinatown, and the street signs say, you know, all written in Chinese. Well, we on outer Chinatown, we owned my mother we owned was a tenement building that the Standard Oil gas station came in and bought the thing and built a big gas station, and so we had the brother we mortgaged that, or we were able to get a lot of cash and still own the property, but we mortgaged it. By manipulating the lease on the gas station, produced about $27,600 plus in the early 1970s. 50 years ago, the cash money had remarkable buying power. We were in the documentary movie business looking for a subject. My welfare job gave plenty of vacation time after I worked there a year or 6 months or a year. Welfare work at the bottom of the department exposed me to the poorest citizens, and I developed a resentment of the wealthy living in fine neighborhoods, and I still resent them. A huge amount of the wealth in the U.S. is inherited, so I resent all these people too. The brother yesterday, or now a couple of months ago, the brother yesterday, on hearing my report of what I am writing, states my opinions are bankrupt since both our movies were created from inherited wealth. This is true, though when we went broke, I borrowed $3,000 to pay composer Art Twain to personally write and perform the Drag Race movie music. It must have taken 3 years or more for me to repay the $3,000. Yeah, but we had really first-rate music written for the movie. There's a whole different playing canned music or written for the movie, two different things. We went looking for the rich people in Carmel, California, and found locked gates and no trespassing signs, and "This means you" signs, and we had to quit the search. I remember crossing the Dunbarton Bridge. I remember it very clearly. And with my brother, after leaving the Carmel lockout, heading for Fremont to explore the famous drag strip. When we arrived, we were able to sneak in the completely deserted facility, a round and round race car track, and an adjoining drag strip. I could immediately sense the brilliant light reflecting from an adjoining 64,000-acre salt marsh at the end of the drag strip. The salt marsh was an extension of San Francisco Bay. The drag strip ended. Then there was a little grass, and then there was the 64,000 acres of all this water and salt marsh, and it produced this beautiful light that made the movie. You got to have light and sound, and there we had that light. And you could see the Golden Gate Bridge, and you could see the San Francisco skyscrapers. So there's also, we've got a picture now. Where's the picture? There it is. Yeah, this thing. Look at that picture. That shows the salt marsh, but it also shows the end of the. You can't see it. But it shows. The reader examines the below photo closely. The highway divides the picture. In the present 2024, the Tulsa electric car factory was directly across the street from the end of the drag strip. And the world's richest man ran the thing, and still runs it. Elon Musk. The drag strip is visible, and at the end of the photo, of the below photo in the 1980s. Now I think this is wrong. Steve Wozniak wasn't involved. He owned he had a lot big financial interest in Jobs, but Steve Jobs' business had an office on the far right of this picture. It's over there somewhere, and it's somewhere there, and they had developed the technology for the future and current Apple computer, and I'm filming this on an Apple cell phone. It was the late 1980s, about 88 or 89. Drag racing were unfit neighbors with the people who were going to change the world, and bulldozers destroyed the drag strip. Since this was 50 years ago, I easily confuse what we know now from what we knew in the 1970s. What counted then was there was no price to film the drag race events beyond the price of admission. Normal sporting events cost big money to film unless you are news cameras for publicity. Second, high quality film and sound equipment were expensive, real expensive. A handheld Eclair camera in 1973 was over $15,000 cash. Plus, you needed a bunch of accessories, the look, eyepiece, thing on your shoulder, all this. A used Nagra tape recorder was $5,000. That's the industry standard tape recorder. We bought a film editing table with a screen. I don't remember the cost. We also had a portable projector with good sound for classroom projection, so we could do preview performances. The brother got a job at W.A. Palmer's Industrial Film Production in San Francisco, and provided access to all these used versions, and also the whole business about. We personally knew Mr. Palmer, who owned that business, and Mr. Palmer was a real big shot. But it got away from the movie business. We solely found we got used versions of all the equipment. We slowly found and paid about $8,000 to $9,000 for all the above equipment. The most important reality of our filmmaking venture was physical danger on the drag strip. It was really dangerous. Just watch the movie and anyone can see my brother and cameraman friend Tim Guideman, now deceased from other causes, filming on top of and next to soon-to-explode race cars. I was hiding behind the grandstand, afraid of being damaged my hearing from the terrible noise. Now here's an example of what can happen on a drag strip. See these guys in white? They're called starters, and this car has gone crazy at the starting line, and it's wagging all over the place, and it could easily kill or maim these starters. But they were skilled, and they could jump out of the way. But that was dangerous stuff. And then we were there, right there with the camera, or Guideman and the brother were there. I was hiding behind the grandstands. Here. No other drag race movie had our style of in-person camera work. Professional cameramen would film from the grandstands, or an announcer would be recording in a studio. In writing this report, I had forgotten the Jackson brothers, veteran cameraman beginning in the 1960s, filming drag cars at Fremont Drag Strip inside the guardrails. They knew how to do it. They were using 8mm and Super 8mm cameras, and compared to my brother and Guideman, they had vast experience filming on top of exploding race cars. I must have convinced Guideman to interview and listen to both of the brothers. Our technical ability was miles ahead of the Jacksons. They were like 1,000 miles. But though they stayed uninjured and knew how to film and hide and dart around safely. Later, the Jacksons, after the Nitro's release in theaters, saw what we had accomplished, and they made and released a type of parody of our movie, where they produce an evangelical announcer screaming in a microphone, calling a drag race for salvation and the Lord. It was better than anything we had ever captured. The Jacksons or their relatives had placed on YouTube an hour and 23 minutes of their footage, minus the preacher roaring about the Lord. I was disappointed. I wanted to see it again. It was so accomplished. I think if you search farther in the Jackson Brothers catalog, you can find the preacher and the Lord. I was friends with a cameraman named Jim Block. He shot the above scene, and I was standing beside him with my. And so this car was called Pete's Little Demon, and we were stupid enough to be standing right there when it 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 it, uh, it lost control, and it was going so fast that it slid by us. It was heading toward us, but the forward speed just drug it right by. But I'm still alive is the point. And so is, I guess, Block. I haven't seen Block in 50 years. Uh, I, I always liked this picture. No. Uh-oh. Now, when I get the pictures confused, yeah, here's the picture. This thing. Now, this is a funny car. All right. He shot the above scene, and I was standing beside him. The car is moving forward and off the track, heading for both of us at the same time. It happened so fast. All right. I always like this picture. The sign on the back of the crew in the photo says Fremont Rec Crew. The funny car has crashed through a wire fence protecting the spectators. You can see the fence wiring wrapped around the rear tires. Just another accident at Fremont Raceway. The crew is lifting the body off the chassis of the race car frame. There would only be about 2 or 3 main event funny car races each year, with huge, large crowds in attendance. No big crowd meant no excitement and nothing to film. Our filming began in 1974 and ended in 1978. When I spent so much time in the race car assembly area, I found large numbers of the spectators and many partially clad women were there too. I encouraged filming here as a relief from the racing, so some of the best scenes and music in the movie are in this section called the pits. When we had shot a lot of film footage, well over several hours, the problem became film editing. It was a daunting task. My brother was gifted by inheriting our father's surgical hands and fingers, though the task required years of experience. A contact through the Palmer's job was found, but this man had named movies and wanted a lot of money we couldn't afford. Somehow, he watched the film footage and gave good advice. I think my advice was string footage together and call high schools to arrange classroom film screenings. I remember the teachers liked that because they didn't have to do anything. They just sit in the back of the classroom and watch a movie. So we were a hot item. But I could read these screenings couldn't have been more valuable. I would sit in the audience and easily read the audience reaction. I remember the result was we were pulling whole races out of the movie. Audience reaction edited a lot of the movie, and I think movie professionals do the same thing. They arrange screenings in a theater. They rent a theater, arrange a screening, and then just have the sensitive people sit there and judge how to edit that movie and get rid of the bad stuff. My memory can be poor, though in early 1979, my brother and Guideman somehow arranged a screening at the George Lucas Movie Company studio in San Rafael. Guideman, I think, had gotten a technical job, and I don't remember what he actually did, at the Lucas Movie Studio in San Rafael. Guideman could have been employed by Lucas as a technician. I think he was. There were weekly screenings for employees of Lucas's favorite foreign films that the workers found boring, since the audience were technicians and not intellectuals pondering foreign film problems. When Nitro came on, with cars crashing and half-naked women, the audience exploded. I wasn't there. I had not been invited. I was a relic from the past, though I did get an excited phone call that night saying that employees shook the building in their reaction. Within a week, the brother had been hired as a labor union special effects film editor, and so that meant just pure money for the Lucas movie business in San Rafael, California. This was an introduction. The dominoes started to fall. We quickly became eligible for Filmex, a big international oh, a big international in Los Angeles. That's the 1979, poster for the Filmex. That was a big deal. Filmex. It's the film festival in Los Angeles. That's a long story. What happened there? Agents scouting Filmex chose Nitro for the Deauville American Film Festival, a large European film competition in France showing American movies. So we were shown there. After the danger of filming the race cars and getting the movie on an American and foreign movie screens became a separate type of negotiation and danger. When the movie was screened at Filmex, we were approached by the lowest type of financial speculators, depraved old men looking to exploit any fools they could find who had a film movie right in their hands. I don't remember the details. We signed with New York distributors, and they paid my brother about $1,600 to fly to New York with the film negatives and the first movie poster shown below. Now where is the? There's Filmex in France. There's Los Angeles. All right. So wait a minute. We signed in New York with New York distributors. The good part was the movie by September 1979 went into national distribution, mainly in the drive-in exploitation market. Though some movie theaters were including we played next to Robert De Niro in Deer Hunter and George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead in Fresno, California. Well, see, look at this. There's the poster. That's our movie poster. This is Dawn of the Dead right there. Now, this is worth waiting to see. There's Dawn of the Dead. Right there. This means Dawn of the Dead. Who was it? George Romero. The dead wake up in their coffins buried under the ground. They somehow dig their way out of their coffins, and here they are, attacking all the citizens around town, wherever the town was. But so I was just overwhelmed. The idea we were playing on the same screen with Dawn of the Dead and Robert De Niro. I was a nobody at the welfare department, and I got this. All right. I love being next to Dawn of the Dead. The bad part was no money. That's Hollywood reality. You're not going to get paid anything. It was Hollywood reality. If you're even thinking about money, get an expensive lawyer, which we did. Educate the lawyer about Hollywood. You got to do that. Sue in a Los Angeles court and wait at least 4 years or more. Win the case, pay the lawyer about 1/3 of the money, and leave with about $65,000. The movie grossed about $1 million. Uh, and leave with about 65,000 and possession of all ownership of the movie and its future distribution rights in an expanding market. So that's when you can get that, you're somebody. Almost 50 years have gone by since we made the movie. For $50, we bought a beautiful used 65-inch Sony television. It's in Alvaro's bedroom in there, and on Craigslist, and I watched American Nitro as if I was watching it for the first time. I hadn't seen it in like 20 years. My initial impression was the intimacy of the camera work. The audience is shown everything possible in the staging area for the race cars. The spectators leave the packed grandstands and crowd around the race cars being torn apart and rebuilt in the pits. No motorsport allows this crowd behavior except drag racing, and that was 50 years ago. You're not getting near that. Your camera work 50 feet away from them. Uh, the affinity is so strong it shows kindness and affection between the racers and the crowd. There were some weird-looking people in the mob and a lot of attractive women. The suddenness of the scene change was striking, and added bits of the unexpected sound added a professional polish. The movie has a real clean to it. That's beautiful, the way the sound works. Another subject consumed a lot of time and our attention was packaging the movie for cassette tape distribution, which is now ancient, and later DVD distribution, which now has the best quality, but now it's everything's streaming. This was the early 1980s. I hired a commercial artist. I can't remember his name, though I remember his studio in the old abandoned Sacramento rail yards. There's it took about a year to produce this thing. I remember I personally had to do it, and there's a lot more going on in that picture than you can see on this screen. It took a long time to arrive at the completed photo. I remember a second artist had to be hired. I had to visually describe the action to be displayed in the poster illustration. I liked the idea of the second car headed straight into the crowd. The artist responsible never received proper credit for their work. This photo in a tiny version is displayed on the spine of the final DVD box. I don't have the, it's pathetic, but I got it somewhere in the house. It's over there in Alvaro's room, I think. The shaded color on the word nitro came from this artwork. The picture should explain itself. It's really a talented picture. I was deeply influenced by my failed filmmaking courses at San Francisco State. I didn't actually fail anything. I just was, I couldn't continue. I didn't have the money. I received an A grade in film production. I probably got a B in documentary film, then told to get out of the school. I could be accused of bragging to increase sales, but I hadn't seen the movie in something like 20 years or more, and I feel I have the right to give my reaction to the movie. I greatly value this quote from documentary film by Paul Rotha, which I've already shown you this thing. The use of the film medium to interpret creatively and in social terms the life of the people as it exists in reality. A second idea from Rotha is the sum of final elements of a successful documentary movie and other creative work goes beyond the sum of its parts and is the definition of creativity. Another product is created, is a form of identity, of individuality and identity. If you say high noon, you know what high noon is. You say what Star Wars is, you know what it is. It becomes, they have a separate identity. That it's hard to explain, but you know what high noon is. Rosa's Rosa's words are, and in the successful film, these elements are closely interwoven. So that the unity achieved by their fusion is of greater value than their sum. That's a true. If you think about it, that is true. The unity achieved by their fusion is of greater value than their sum. My brother's response is these words and ideas are fine somewhere else about some other type of people, but have nothing whatever to do with drag racing, exploding cars, and half-naked women. So I disagree with that. This was another flattering surprise about a year ago. In the summer of 2023, the movie director Quentin Tarantino, he's an A director, and his film editor, with the help of a female researcher, after a long search, found an old film version of American Nitro. They staged a film festival at a theater in Los Angeles, and they ran a large number of forgotten old movies, and we were included and played next to a Jack Palance movie named Mr. Scarface. Now, I couldn't find a decent picture of Jack Palance, but to me, being anywhere near Jack Palance in a movie theater. Jack Palance is considered the greatest villain that's ever appeared on a movie screen, and he really is. And to be on the same play on the same screen, Jack Palance plays, and then you're next. That's everything by my standards. They then recorded a 50-minute YouTube review of our movie. They didn't know what funny cars were, though they loved everything, especially Jungle Pam. She's one of the acts, and she was a really, really beautiful woman. Just barely enough clothes to make her fit to watch on a drag strip. They didn't know what funny cars were, though they loved everything Jungle Pam, who they described as a dominatrix, a woman who physically or psychologically dominates her partner in a sadomasochistic encounter. Source, Merriam-Webster Dictionary. They couldn't have been more excited and complimentary of the movie. Jungle Pam is one of the most exciting things in the movie. After the movie was made, my brother and I traveled to Amtrak because I'm afraid to fly on airplanes to New Orleans, and drove through the South by rented cars to arrive in Washington, D.C. and the separate film museum of the Library of Congress. And then I lost. Oh, there it is. There. Look. This place ever was a paradise it's in Culpeper, Virginia, about 80 miles from Washington, D.C. And this was movie paradise. That was it. And drove to the separate film museum in the Library of Congress. This building and its underground vaults contains the largest collection of old movies in the world. Later, when I got home, I called their phone number, somehow got on the line with someone in authority who told me he was in charge of the museum. I asked to donate a movie that I wanted to preserve. The man on the phone took me seriously. This is the boss of this museum, the largest collection of movies in the world. After the, all right, later when I got, all right, I asked to donate a movie that I wanted to preserve. The man on the phone took me seriously and wanted all the film elements to place in his vaults. I was living in a cheap Sacramento apartment that was destined to become Section 8 housing. If you don't know what Section 8 housing is, look it up on the internet. I had nothing to send, and my brother had all the film elements, negatives, and soundtracks stacked up in his garage, the last thing from correct film preservation except for Section 8. Years seemed to go by, and phone calls to the museum in Culpeper, Virginia, finally compromise was arrived at when the Virginia Museum had a strong relationship with the Academy Awards Museum in Los Angeles. I didn't like Los Angeles when they were a privately owned museum compared to the U.S. government. The boss in Virginia made the decision to go with the Los Angeles Museum below because they have a strong relationship with this Academy Awards institution. The main building is an old department store converted to a film museum to save money. That's what got me upset about it. Now, here's the picture. There's the department store, and it's converted department store to a film museum, and there's the film screening room. The big, fancy bubble. The boss in Virginia made the decision to go with the Los Angeles Museum because they have a strong. The main building's an old department store converted to a. The movie negative American National is now located in the caverns. That's where the thing is located right now. The movie negatives is located in the caverns in the third picture below. After a lot of searching, I found a 2016 letter. That's 8 years ago, to me from Fritz Herzog, collections curator of the American Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Film Archive in Hollywood, shown above. Reading it again 8 years later, I realized he was a legitimate and fully understood the problems of film preservation. Proper storage doesn't just mean low temperature and humidity. It also and humidity control. It means constantly filtering gases and particulate matter from the air in the storage facility, as well as the film in proper archival film cans that are made of inert materials and vented to let the aseptic gas escape. Not many people know this. So I'm putting it in here deliberately. The third photo is located in the block behind the two. The Academy Awards takes place in the Dolby Theater at a completely different location. The above is a lot of detail. Film quality is essential to the audience viewing the movie and anyone responsible for film preservation. Most movies, something like 80 and 90% of movies, have been destroyed because they weren't properly preserved. That was my. The real problem here is we had the ability to make decent documentary movies and do what Rotha said. Our skill and talent was wasted on what became a blank screen. So that end the show.